The cleaning cart's left wheels squeaked as I pushed it down the hallway of Sterling Financial's executive floor. Another late night, another round of empty offices to clean. The executives had all gone home hours ago, leaving behind their usual mess: coffee cups with lipstick stains, scattered papers, and carelessly dropped paper clips that I had to fish out from under their expensive desks. My name is Marcus Torres, though to the employees of Sterling Financial, I was just the janitor or sometimes "Hey you." They never bothered to learn my name, never looked me in the eye when they passed me in the hallways. To them, I was invisible, just another part of the building's machinery, like the elevators or the air conditioning. I pulled out my phone and checked the time, 8:45 p.m. Perfect. The night security guard wouldn't do his rounds on this floor for another 45 minutes. I had already memorized everyone's schedules, their patterns, their habits. You see, being invisible has its advantages. When people think you're nobody, they don't bother to hide anything from you. As I cleaned Bradley Thompson's office, Senior VP of Acquisitions, I could clearly see the documents scattered across his desk. Confidential merger plans, internal valuation reports, client lists. They never thought the janitor would understand what these papers meant, let alone use the information. But what they didn't know was that before I became their janitor, I had graduated summa cum laude from MIT with a double major in business and computer science. Not that it mattered. One market crash and a family medical emergency had wiped out my savings and left me with crushing debt. When you're desperate, you take whatever job you can get. That first year as a janitor had been humiliating. I still remember Jessica Moore from Human Resources walking past me in the break room, wrinkling her nose as she whispered to her colleague, "God, can't he afford better clothes? He always looks so shabby." I was wearing a cleaned and pressed uniform, the same one they required me to wear. But to them, everything about me looked shabby simply because I was the janitor. Then there was Michael Chin, the hotshot young trader who loved to show off. "Hey cleaning guy," he called out one evening as I emptied his trash. "Maybe if he'd studied harder in school, you wouldn't be scrubbing toilets for a living." His colleagues laughed, and I kept my head down, focusing on my work. What Michael didn't know was that at that very moment, one of my algorithms was executing trades worth millions of dollars through a shell company I had created. While they mocked me, I was building something that would change everything. It had started almost by accident. During those long nights cleaning the offices, I began noticing patterns in the documents I saw. Market trends, investment strategies, client behaviors. Being invisible meant I had access to every floor, every department. I saw the complete picture in a way that even the executives didn't. I started small, using my savings to make careful investments based on the patterns I observed. My background in computer science helped me create sophisticated algorithms that could analyze market data and execute trades automatically. Within 6 months, my initial $5,000 investment had grown to $50,000. That's when I formed Torres Ventures, though of course I wasn't listed anywhere as the owner. On paper, the company was run by a reclusive investor who never attended meetings in person. Everything was handled through layers of shell companies and virtual offices. I kept cleaning offices by day, building my empire by night. Every insult, every dismissive glance, every cruel joke just fueled my determination. They thought the janitor was taking a bus home because he couldn't afford a car. In reality, I was using that time to work on my trading algorithms on my laptop. "Look at him," I overheard Bradley Thompson say one day to his assistant. "No ambition, no drive. That's why some people never amount to anything in life." I had to bite back a smile. That same morning, Torres Ventures had closed a deal worth $12 million. My company was growing faster than I had ever imagined, but I wasn't ready to reveal myself. Not yet. I needed them to keep underestimating me, keep thinking I was nothing. Every night, after finishing my cleaning rounds, I would go to my small apartment and transform into a different person. I had set up a high-tech trading station hidden behind a false wall, multiple screens showing market data, powerful computers running my algorithms 24/7. This was my real office, not the janitor's closet they thought I operated from. By the third year, Torres Ventures had grown into a significant player in the financial technology sector. We were known for our innovative trading algorithms and perfect timing in market movements. Speculation about the mysterious CEO was rampant in financial circles. Some thought it was a former Wall Street executive. Others believed it was a group of Silicon Valley entrepreneurs. No one suspected the quiet janitor who cleaned their offices every night. Then came the day that would change everything. I was emptying Bradley Thompson's trash when I saw it, a confidential memo about Sterling Financial's impending collapse. The company had made a series of catastrophically bad investments, covering them up through creative accounting. They were weeks away from insolvency, and none of their employees knew. My first thought was about the regular workers, the receptionists, mail clerks, maintenance staff. People like me, at least as far as the executives were concerned. They would lose everything while the top executives probably had golden parachutes waiting. That night, in my hidden office, I made a decision. Torres Ventures had grown into a $300 million company over the past 5 years. We had the resources to acquire Sterling Financial, restructure it, and save those jobs. But doing so would mean revealing myself. I spent the next week carefully planning every detail. Torres Ventures began quietly buying up Sterling Financial's devalued stock through various subsidiaries. By the time Bradley Thompson realized what was happening, we owned 40% of the company. The morning everything changed started like any other. I pushed my cleaning cart down the hallway, listening to the panicked whispers. The entire executive floor was in chaos. Torres Ventures now owns 51% of our shares. Bradley was shouting into his phone. How did we not see this coming? Who the hell is behind this company? I smiled to myself as I cleaned the windows, watching his reflection as he paced back and forth. Suddenly, Jessica from HR burst into his office, her face pale. The Torres Ventures CEO is coming here. Today, they're calling an emergency board meeting at 2 p.m. Bradley slammed his phone down. Finally, I want to see who this mysterious bastard is who thinks they can take over my company. I finished my shift at noon, earlier than usual. Instead of taking the bus home, I walked to the luxury apartment building 2 blocks away where I kept my CEO wardrobe. The transformation took an hour: expensive suit, designer watch, perfectly styled hair. Looking in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. At exactly 2 p.m., I walked into Sterling Financial's main conference room. The entire board was there, along with key executives. Bradley Thompson sat at the front, his face set in a hostile glare. The CEO of Torres Ventures, my assistant, announced. Yes, I had an assistant. She was one of the few people who knew my true identity. I watched their faces as I walked in, confusion at first, then disbelief. Jessica's mouth fell open. Michael Chen dropped his pen. Bradley Thompson stood up, his face turning red. This is some kind of joke, he sputtered. This is our janitor. I took my place at the head of the table, setting down my briefcase calmly. Marcus Torres, CEO of Torres Ventures. And yes, until about 2 hours ago, I was also your janitor. The room erupted in chaos. People were shouting, demanding explanations. I held up my hand, and to my satisfaction, they fell silent. For 5 years, I began, my voice carrying across the stunned room. I cleaned your offices, I emptied your trash, I scrubbed your floors. And while you were all too busy looking down on me to notice, I built a company worth over $300 million. I turned to Michael Chen. You told me I should have studied harder in school. I graduated summa cum laude from MIT with a double major in business and computer science. His face went pale as several people turned to stare at him. Jessica, I continued, watching her shrink in her seat, you made fun of my shabby clothes. The watch I'm wearing right now costs more than your annual salary. But unlike you, I don't judge people by what they wear. Bradley Thompson had found his voice again. This is impossible. You're nothing but a janitor? I finished for him. Yes, I was. And that's exactly why I succeeded. Because you never suspected me. You never thought I could understand the documents I saw while cleaning your offices. You never thought I could build something bigger than anything you've achieved. I opened my briefcase and began distributing folders. Now let's discuss the real reason I'm here. I know of the cover-up, the bad investments, the impending collapse. I own 51% of Sterling Financial, which means I'm now in charge. The blood drained from Bradley's face. How did you? I saw everything, I said simply. When you think someone's invisible, you don't bother hiding things from them. I stood up, buttoning my jacket. There will be changes. First, all current non-executive employees will keep their jobs. The company will be restructured, but will protect the people who actually do the work around here. You can't do this, Bradley protested weakly. I smiled. I already have. Oh, and one more thing. The janitors, maintenance staff, and all other support personnel are getting an immediate 50% raise. It's amazing how much money you can find when you cut out excessive executive bonuses. Over the next few weeks, Sterling Financial transformed. I replaced most of the executive team with people who had actual skills rather than just connections. Bradley Thompson tried to sue, claiming I had obtained information illegally. But everything I'd done was completely legal. Being a janitor didn't mean I couldn't look at papers left in plain sight. The story of the janitor CEO made headlines. Suddenly, everyone wanted to interview me to learn how I built my company while working as a custodian. I turned down most requests, but I did agree to speak at a few universities, telling my story to students who might need to hear that success doesn't always follow a traditional path. Jessica tried to apologize, claiming she had never meant to be cruel. Michael Chen sent a long email explaining that his comments were just jokes. I didn't respond to either of them. Some bridges, once burned, shouldn't be rebuilt. 6 months later, Sterling Financial had been completely integrated into Taurus Ventures. Our market value had doubled, and our innovative trading algorithms were revolutionizing the industry. I kept the janitor's closet where I used to store my cleaning supplies. It was converted into a small museum of sorts, displaying my old cleaning cart, uniform, and a photo of me from my days as the invisible janitor. Every new employee is required to visit that closet on their first day. It serves as a reminder that you never know who someone might be, what they might be capable of. Success doesn't always wear a suit and tie. Sometimes it pushes a cleaning cart and waits for the right moment to reveal itself. I still think about those years sometimes, about the people who looked right through me, who thought they were better than the quiet man who cleaned their offices. Their judgments, their mockery, their dismissive attitudes, all of it helped fuel my determination to succeed. Today, I'm known as one of the most innovative CEOs in the financial technology sector. Taurus Ventures is valued at over $2 billion, and we're expanding into new markets every year. But I never forgot what it felt like to be invisible. That's why my company now has one unusual policy that surprises many people in the industry. Every executive, including me, spends one day each month working alongside our custodial staff. It's amazing how differently you treat people when you've walked in their shoes. Last week, I was back on the executive floor, not in a suit this time, but in a janitor's uniform. A young executive who was working late didn't recognize me and barely looked up as I emptied his trash. I smiled to myself, wondering if he knew that the cleaning guy he was ignoring could buy and sell his entire career without blinking. But I didn't say anything. After all, being underestimated had served me well. Sometimes the best success stories are written by the people no one sees coming. My name is Olivia, and I learned early in life that family can be your biggest critics. For years, I endured the sideways glances, the whispered comments, and the not-so-subtle jabs about my little online business. My sister Madison was always the star of the family, the golden child who could do no wrong. I still remember the day I told my family I was leaving my corporate job to start my own business. We were all gathered around the dinner table for Sunday dinner, a tradition my mother insisted on maintaining even though most of us had moved out years ago. I'm starting my own company, I announced, trying to keep my voice steady despite my racing heart. An e-commerce platform specializing in sustainable home goods. The silence that followed was deafening. My father's fork stopped midway to his mouth. My mother's smile froze, then slowly melted into a concerned frown. But Madison? She burst out laughing. An online shop? Seriously, Olivia? She wiped tears of mirth from her eyes. You're leaving your 6-figure job at Goldman Sachs to sell eco-friendly soap on the internet. It's more than just soap, I started to explain, but Madison was already talking over me. God, this is just like when you thought you could be a professional photographer in high school, she smirked. Remember that disaster? Of course I remembered. Madison had never let me forget how I'd spent my savings on a professional camera, only to have my small photography business fizzle out after a few months. But this was different. I had a plan, market research, and most importantly, a vision. My father cleared his throat. Olivia, honey, maybe you should think this through. Your job at Goldman is stable, prestigious. You're on track for senior management. I have thought it through, I insisted. The market for sustainable products is growing exponentially. I've already secured partnerships with several artisanal manufacturers. And, Artisanal manufacturers, Madison interrupted, her voice dripping with disdain. You mean people making soap in their garages? My mother reached across the table to pat my hand. Sweetie, we just want what's best for you. Look at Madison, she's killing it at her tech company. Executive VP at 32. Now that's something to aspire to. I pulled my hand away, feeling that familiar ache in my chest. Madison had always been the family's measuring stick for success. Her prestigious MBA, her rapid corporate climb, her magazine-worthy wedding to a venture capitalist. Everything she did was perfect. My decision is made, I said quietly but firmly. I start next month. That was 3 years ago. 3 years of building my company, Hiko Haven, from the ground up. 3 years of working 18-hour days, learning every aspect of e-commerce, and carefully cultivating relationships with sustainable manufacturers across the globe. 3 years of enduring my family's constant judgment and Madison's mockery. What they didn't know was that EcoHaven wasn't just an online shop. Behind the scenes, I had built a sophisticated platform that connected eco-conscious consumers with verified sustainable producers. We didn't just sell products. We created a marketplace that revolutionized how people bought and sold sustainable goods. But I kept that part quiet. Let them think I was just selling soap. Every family gathering became an exercise in restraint. Madison would inevitably steer the conversation toward her latest achievement, a major merger she was overseeing, a new office opening in Singapore, the tech magazine that featured her as one of 30 under 35 to watch. How's your little shop doing, Olivia? She asked, her voice sweet with fake concern. Still managing to keep the lights on. I'd smile and give vague answers about steady growth and expanding product lines. Meanwhile, I was closing deals with major retailers, developing proprietary software for supply chain verification, and quietly buying up smaller competitors. Last month's Sunday dinner was no different. Madison swept in late, as usual, dressed in a designer suit that probably cost more than what she thought I made in a month. Sorry I'm late, she announced, air-kissing everyone's cheeks. Board meeting ran long. We're finalizing the details of our expansion into the Asian market. My mother beamed. That's wonderful, darling. Isn't that wonderful, Richard? She prodded my father, who nodded appreciatively. Very impressive, he agreed. Your company's stock has been doing exceptionally well. Madison preened under the praise. Well, leadership is all about vision and taking calculated risks. Speaking of which, she turned to me with that familiar condescending smile. Poor Sarah, still running that pathetic online shop. You know, we're always hiring at TechFront. I could put in a good word for you. Get you a real job. I took a sip of wine to hide my smile. If only she knew that her company's recent success was partly due to the e-commerce management software I get licensed from one of my shell companies. Thanks, but I'm doing fine, I replied mildly. Madison laughed. Fine? Honey, you're 35, single and selling organic dish soap on the internet. That's not fine, that's. She gestured vaguely with her wine glass, settling. Our mother jumped in, ever the peacekeeper. Madison, don't be harsh. I'm sure Olivia's business is sustainable. She said the word like it was foreign, throwing me what she probably thought was a supportive smile. Actually, I started to say, but Madison was already launching into a story about her recent meeting with potential investors from Shanghai. I let her talk, let her bask in her perceived superiority, because I knew something she didn't, something none of them knew. While Madison had been climbing the corporate ladder at TechFront, I had built EcoHaven into a powerhouse. Our proprietary blockchain-based authentication system for verifying sustainable products had become the industry standard. Major retailers were fighting for partnerships. Venture capital firms were begging to invest. But the best part? I had just received some very interesting information about TechFront, Madison's precious company. Their expansion plans weren't going as smoothly as she claimed. In fact, they were in serious trouble. I excused myself early that night, citing an early morning meeting. As I drove home to my penthouse apartment, the one my family thought I couldn't afford, I couldn't help but smile. Madison's carefully constructed world was about to crumble, and she had no idea. Little did I know that in just 2 weeks, my sister would be standing in my office, her designer mascara running down her face, begging for my help. But that's when the real story begins. The call came at 3 a.m., 2 weeks after that family dinner. I was still working, reviewing contracts for our expansion into European markets, when Madison's name flashed across my phone screen. I almost didn't answer. She never called me unless it was to gloat about something. Olivia? Her voice sounded strange, shaky. I need to see you. It's important. I leaned back in my chair, studying the city lights through my office window. It's 3 a.m., Madison. Please, she whispered. Please, I need your help. That got my attention. Madison never said please, and she certainly never admitted to needing help, especially not from me. Come to my office, I said, then gave her an address she'd never heard before. But that's in the financial district, she said, confused. I thought your shop was. Just come, Madison. 45 minutes later, my private elevator opened. Madison stepped out, and I barely recognized her. Her designer suit was wrinkled, her perfect hair disheveled, and her eyes were red from crying. She stopped dead when she saw where she was. The top floor of the Miller building was a far cry from the small warehouse space she thought I worked from. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city. The reception area alone was bigger than her entire office at TechFront. I don't understand, she stammered. What is this place? I stood up from behind my desk. Welcome to EcoHaven's global headquarters. She walked forward in a daze, taking in the sleek modern design, the massive screens displaying real-time data from our global operations, the rows of awards and recognition plaques on the walls. This is impossible, she whispered. You sell soap on the internet. No, Madison. I built a revolutionary e-commerce platform that's currently valued at just over $2.8 billion. The soap was just the beginning. She sank into one of the leather chairs facing my desk, her legs seemingly giving out. But, how? Why didn't you tell us? I sat down across from her. Would you have believed me? Or would you have mocked this too, like everything else I've ever tried to do? Tears spilled down her cheeks. Olivia, I'm so sorry. I need your help. TechFront is in trouble. I know, I said quietly. Your Asian expansion failed spectacularly. Your new software platform has critical security flaws. Your stocks are going to plummet when the market opens tomorrow morning. Her head snapped up. How do you know all that? Because I've been watching. I know about the corners you cut, the safety protocols you ignored, the financial reports you fudged. Did you really think nobody would notice? We can fix it, she said desperately. We just need time. And money. $10 million would be enough to patch the security holes and keep us afloat until we can recover. I opened my laptop and turned it to face her. On the screen was her company's complete financial situation, far worse than even she knew. 10 million wouldn't even begin to fix this, Madison. Your company needs closer to 50 million to survive. And that's assuming you can rebuild your entire security infrastructure in less than a month. She stared at the screen, her face growing paler. How do you have these numbers? Even I haven't seen some of these reports. Because 3 months ago, when I saw what was coming, I started buying TechFront shares through various shell companies. I currently own 18% of your company. Madison's hands began to shake. Why? Why would you do that? I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city I'd quietly conquered while they all underestimated me. Because sometimes the best lessons come from our biggest failures. You needed to fail, Madison. You needed to understand that success isn't about titles or magazine covers or impressing our parents. It's about building something real, something that lasts. Please, she whispered. Please help me. I'll lose everything. I turned back to her. No, you'll lose your title, your corner office, and your inflated sense of superiority. But you won't lose everything. In fact, you might gain something more valuable, humility. What are you going to do? I sat back down, folding my hands on my desk. Tomorrow morning, EcoHaven will announce its acquisition of TechFront. We'll absorb your company, fix the security issues, and restructure the entire operation. Your shareholders will get a fair price for their stocks, and your employees will keep their jobs. Hope flickered in her eyes. And me? You'll step down as executive VP. If you want, I'll give you an entry-level position in our product development team. You'll start at the bottom, just like I did. No special treatment, no shortcuts. Entry-level, she gasped. But I have an MBA from Harvard. And I built a billion-dollar company while you were mocking me at family dinners, I replied calmly. Your choice, Madison. Take the job or walk away. She was quiet for a long moment, tears streaming down her face. Finally, she nodded. I'll take the job. Good. One more thing, you'll tell our parents yourself. About TechFront's failure, about my success, all of it. No more pretending. The next Sunday dinner was very different. Madison sat quietly while I presented my parents with the truth about Eco Haven. My mother cried, apologizing over and over for doubting me. My father kept shaking his head, muttering about how he should have seen it. But the best moment came weeks later when I visited our product development department. There was Madison, without her designer suits and perfect makeup, working alongside people she would have looked down on just months ago. She was learning, struggling, and for the first time in her life, earning her success instead of expecting it. How's your little soap company doing? She asked when she saw me, but this time there was no mockery in her voice, only respect, and maybe a touch of awe. I smiled. We're doing just fine, Madison. Just fine. As I walked away, I couldn't help but think about how sometimes the biggest victories come not from proving others wrong, but from showing them a better way to be right. Madison had lost her company, but she was gaining something far more valuable, the chance to build something real, something that would last. And me. I had finally stopped being the family disappointment and become something better, a sister who could teach rather than taunt, lead rather than follow, and succeed without needing anyone's approval but my own. The next time someone asks me about my little online shop, I just smile and remember that success doesn't always need to shout to be heard. Sometimes the quietest businesses make the loudest statements, and the best revenge isn't proving others wrong. It's proving yourself right. The crystal glasses clinked against the mahogany dining table as my mother set down another bottle of expensive wine. Christmas dinner at the Sullivan house was in full swing, complete with the annual tradition of everyone bragging about their corporate achievements while subtly, or not so subtly, mocking my career choices. And just like that, I secured the merger with First Capital Bank, my sister Victoria announced, earning appreciative murmurs from our assembled family. By next quarter, Sullivan Financial will be the largest banking software provider in the Northeast. I took another sip of water, trying to ignore the irony of her statement. If only they knew who really controlled the banking software industry. Olivia, my Aunt Margaret's sharp voice cut through my thoughts. Still doing that little website thing. All eyes turned to me, and I could feel the judgment radiating from each carefully maintained expression. At 33, I was the family disappointment, the one who'd walked away from a prestigious position at Sullivan Financial to start my own tech company. Yes, I replied simply, but before I could elaborate, Victoria let out a dramatic sigh. Still playing with your little website, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. You know, we're always hiring junior developers at Sullivan Financial. I could put in a good word. She's just not cut out for corporate success, my mother added, refilling Victoria's glass while pointedly ignoring mine. Not everyone can be a natural leader like your sister. I felt my jaw tighten but kept my expression neutral. If they only knew that my little website was actually Nova Tech Solutions, one of the most sophisticated financial technology companies in the world, operating through a complex network of shell corporations and subsidiaries. Well, not everyone can be as successful as Victoria, my father chimed in, beaming at my sister. She's about to revolutionize the entire banking industry with our new security platform. Victoria preened under the praise, but I had to suppress a smile. Their new security platform, if only they knew who really owned the underlying technology. Actually, I said carefully, I have some news of my own. Oh, darling, my mother interrupted. Perhaps save the small updates for another time. Victoria was just about to tell us about the new corporate headquarters. I fell silent, watching as my sister launched into a detailed description of Sullivan Financial's expansion plans. Let them have tonight, I thought. Tomorrow would change everything. Later that evening, as I drove back to my modest apartment, the one my family assumed was all I could afford, my phone buzzed with an urgent message from Marcus, my chief technology officer. Everything's set for tomorrow. All systems are ready for the integration switch. They won't know what hit them. I smiled, thinking of the carefully orchestrated plan that would unfold in less than 12 hours. For 3 years, I'd operated in the shadows, building an empire while my family dismissed me as a failure. Novatech wasn't just another software company, it was the invisible giant that had systematically acquired controlling interests in key financial infrastructure across the country. And tomorrow, Sullivan Financial would discover that their precious new security platform was actually built on Novatech's architecture. The licensing agreement they'd so eagerly signed gave us complete control over their entire system. Victoria's triumphant merger announcement was about to become her biggest humiliation. I parked my car and took the elevator to my apartment. Not the real one in the penthouse of the city's most exclusive building, but the modest space I maintained for family visits. Inside, I opened my safe and pulled out the final documents for tomorrow's technical integration. The morning would bring the kind of dramatic revelation my family seemed to love so much. Only this time, the shock would be on them. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Marcus. Server migration is complete. By sunrise, every major bank in the Northeast will be running on our systems. I poured myself a glass of wine, not the cheap variety my family assumed I drank, but a vintage worth more than Victoria's monthly salary. Tomorrow would mark the end of Olivia the nobody, the family disappointment, the one who was just playing with websites. Tomorrow, they'd learn exactly who I'd become while they were too busy looking down their noses to notice my rise. I opened my laptop to review the final stage of our plan. 3 years ago, when I left Sullivan Financial, I'd seen what they couldn't. That traditional banking software was vulnerable, outdated, and ripe for disruption. I tried to tell them, to convince them we needed to innovate. You're just jealous of your sister's success, my father had said dismissively. Leave the real technical decisions to those who understand them. So I did. I left the company and started building something better, something that would revolutionize financial technology while they clung to their outdated systems. What they didn't know was that their entire infrastructure now depended on my company's technology. I brought up the dashboard showing our global network, thousands of servers processing millions of transactions across every major financial institution in the country, all of it hidden behind layers of shell companies and subsidiaries, with Novatech quietly pulling the strings. Tomorrow, when the final integration was complete, every transaction at Sullivan Financial would route through our servers. Every decision they made would require our approval. Every dollar they moved would flow through systems I controlled. My phone chimed with a family group text from my mother. Don't forget, Sullivan Financial's big announcement tomorrow. Victoria will be on CNBC discussing the merger. I smiled, imagining the very different announcement that would actually be made. The carefully crafted press release was already prepared, revealing Novatech as the true power behind the banking industry's technological infrastructure. Opening my real email, not the basic account my family knew about, but the secure server used by one of the most powerful CEOs in tech, I reviewed the message that would go out to all Sullivan Financial clients tomorrow morning. The one explaining that their accounts were now being managed by Novatech's superior systems. The one revealing that the little website they'd mocked had become the backbone of modern banking. I walked to my window, looking out at the city where I'd built my empire in secret. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, they'd learn that sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one you should watch most carefully. The next morning, I sat in my real office, the entire top floor of Novatech's headquarters, watching the sun rise over the city skyline. Across the street, the Sullivan Financial Building stood proud and oblivious, its logo still illuminated in the early morning light. Ms. Walker, my assistant Sarah, appeared at my door. It's starting. I turned to my monitors, where dozens of screens showed banking systems across the country switching over to Novatech's infrastructure. Each transition was seamless, invisible to the average user, but revolutionary in its implications. Your sister just arrived at Sullivan Financial, Marcus reported, joining us with his tablet. She's about to go live on CNBC to announce the merger. I smiled, adjusting my Armani suit, a far cry from the intentionally modest clothes I wore around my family. Has she tried to access any accounts yet? Not yet. But the board members are starting to arrive for the morning meeting. Several have already attempted to log in. Right on cue, my phone lit up with urgent messages from Sullivan Financial's tech support team. Messages meant for their senior management but quietly routed to my office instead. Multiple system access issues, unable to verify credentials, payment processing delays. I stood up, gathering my documents. Time to pay my family a visit. The walk across the street felt surreal. Through the glass walls of Sullivan Financial's lobby, I could see Victoria standing with a group of reporters, practicing her merger announcement. My father was nearby, beaming with pride as he watched his golden child prepare for her moment of glory. I stepped into the elevator, Marcus and Sarah flanking me with briefcases containing the evidence of our complete control over the banking system. The doors opened directly into the executive floor, where chaos had already begun to unfold. "What do you mean all the accounts are locked?" My father's voice boomed from the conference room. "How can every single system be down?" Victoria's interview prep had been interrupted, her perfect composure cracking as she barked orders into her phone. "I don't care what it takes, get those servers back online now." I walked calmly into the conference room, followed by my executive team. "Olivia." Victoria's voice rose an octave. "What are you doing here?" "We're in the middle of a crisis." "I know," I replied, setting my briefcase on the polished conference table. "That's why I'm here." "This is ridiculous," my father snapped. "We don't have time for whatever small problem you're having with your website. Our entire system is down." "No," I corrected him, nodding to Marcus, who began distributing folders to the stunned board members. "Your system is working perfectly. It's just under new management." Victoria's perfectly manicured hand trembled as she opened the folder. "What is this?" "The complete documentation showing Novatech's ownership of your core banking infrastructure," I explained. "Or more specifically, my ownership." The silence that followed was deafening. My father's face had gone pale as he scanned the documents. "This is impossible," he whispered. "Novatech is a multi-billion-dollar company. They control half the banking software in the country." "Yes," I agreed. "We do." "We?" Victoria's voice cracked. "What do you mean, we?" I turned to the main screen, bringing up Novatech's true organizational structure. "That little website you've been mocking, it was just the public face. Behind it, I built the largest financial technology company in the world." My mother, who had arrived just in time to witness the revelation, sank into a chair. "But you work from that small office downtown." "A front," I explained. "Novatech operates in 40 countries. We own this building, actually. And as of this morning, we control every transaction that flows through Sullivan Financial Systems." "Why?" my father demanded, his voice hoarse. "Why go to all this trouble?" I met his eyes across the table. 3 years ago, I tried to tell you our systems were vulnerable, that we needed to innovate or be left behind. You told me to leave the real technical decisions to those who understand them. Well, I did." I gestured to Sarah, who began passing out more documents. "These papers detail exactly how outdated and vulnerable your current infrastructure is. Everything you've built is now dependent on Novatech's superior systems." Victoria's hands shook as she flipped through the pages. "You'll destroy us," she whispered. "No," I corrected. "I'm saving you. Novatech isn't just taking control, we're offering to acquire Sullivan Financial at a fair price before the market realizes how vulnerable you really are." The board members leaned forward, suddenly very interested. They'd seen the warning signs, even if they'd been afraid to challenge the Sullivan family about it. "You can't do this," my father breathed. "We're family." "Family?" I laughed softly. "Was it family when you dismissed every idea I brought to the table, when you mocked my work, when you called my company a little website just yesterday?" I stood up, surveying the room. "You have 24 hours to accept our offer. After that, we go public with everything we've found. Your choice." "Mom," Victoria pleaded, turning to her mother, who sat frozen in shock. "Do something." But there was nothing she could do, nothing any of them could do. "Last night at Christmas dinner," I said, my voice carrying to every corner of the suddenly silent room, "you laughed at my business. You spent years undermining me, belittling my achievements, assuming my silence meant weakness." I walked to the door, then turned back one final time. "I want you to remember this moment. Remember that the daughter you dismissed as a failure now controls every dollar you touch." The next hour passed in a blur of signatures and legal requirements. Victoria was escorted to her office to collect her things, her perfect composure finally cracking as reality set in. My father avoided my eyes as he surrendered his executive credentials. My mother's designer handbag lay forgotten on the conference table. Later that evening, I stood in my office at Novatech, watching the sun set behind the city skyline. Marcus appeared with a glass of champagne, the same expensive brand my family had been drinking last night while mocking my career. "Was it worth it?" he asked quietly. "All these years of hiding your success?" I thought about the decades of condescension, the dismissive comments, the patronizing offers of entry-level positions. Then I thought about the empire I built, the thousands of employees who relied on me, the technology we created. It wasn't about revenge, I said finally. It was about proving that success doesn't always look the way they think it should, that you don't have to follow their path to build something meaningful. The following year brought changes no one in my family could have predicted. Sullivan Financial, under Nova Tech's leadership, transformed into a cutting-edge technology company. Victoria eventually found a mid-level position at another firm, hopefully having learned the value of humility. My parents, their banking dynasty shattered, stopped hosting their achievement-focused holiday dinners. And me? I kept building, growing, expanding, not to prove anything to them anymore, but because I discovered something they never understood. True success isn't about titles or family names or merger announcements. It's about creating something meaningful, something that lasts. These days, when people ask about my path to success, I tell them the truth. Sometimes the best response to those who underestimate you isn't to prove them wrong immediately. It's to build something so magnificent that when they finally realize their mistake, it's already too late to matter. I stood at the window of my penthouse office, watching the city lights flicker to life in the growing dusk. 50 stories below, employees were leaving work for the day, including my father, mother, and sister, though they had no idea they were working in my building. 10 years ago, they'd thrown me out of our family home, calling me useless, a disgrace, a disappointment. Now they worked for my company, Nova Technologies, without knowing I was the founder and CEO. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Ms. Parker." My assistant Sarah's voice came through the intercom. "Everything's set for tomorrow's company-wide meeting. Are you sure about this?" I smiled, touching the glass. Yes, it's time they knew. The night they kicked me out was burned into my memory. I was 22, fresh out of college with a degree in computer science, not the law degree they'd wanted me to pursue. What kind of career can you have with computers? My father had sneered. Real success comes from connections, prestige. My sister Diane was the golden child, top of her class at law school, engaged to a senator's son, everything they'd wanted in a daughter. I was the disappointment who spent too much time coding and not enough time networking at country club events. The final straw came when I turned down a position at my father's law firm to work at a tech startup. "If you're too good for this family's help," he'd roared, "then you're too good for this family." They'd given me an hour to pack. My mother stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching me throw clothes into a duffel bag. "This is for your own good, Emma," she'd said. "Sometimes people need to hit rock bottom before they can succeed." Diane had smirked from behind our mother. "Maybe now you'll learn what real life is like instead of playing with computers all day." I left with $200 in my pocket, a laptop, and an idea that would change everything. The startup I joined was working on revolutionary AI technology, but their management was a mess. Within 6 months, they were on the verge of bankruptcy. That's when I saw my opportunity. I approached venture capitalists with a plan to buy out the company and restructure it. They were skeptical at first. I was young, unknown, with no business experience. But my pitch was solid, my understanding of the technology unmatched. I got the funding. By 25, I had turned the failing startup into Nova Technologies, now one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country. But I kept my identity private, operating through a series of holding companies. The public face of Nova was our COO, while I worked behind the scenes. 3 years ago, Nova bought the downtown office building where my father's law firm was struggling to pay rent. Instead of evicting them, I had my HR department offer them positions. My father became our legal counsel. My mother joined as an office manager. Diane, whose prestigious law career had stalled, took a position in our contracts department. I watched them through the building's security cameras sometimes. My father, his hair now more gray than black, hustling through the lobby each morning. My mother organizing office parties, trying to network her way up the corporate ladder. Diane, her designer suits a little less pristine these days, always looking slightly desperate to prove herself. They loved working at Nova. I heard them bragging about it at family events I wasn't invited to, information gathered through the extensive network I'd built over the years. A truly professional environment, my father would say. Finally, a company that recognizes talent, my mother would add. If they only knew that the mysterious CEO they speculated about was the daughter they'd thrown away. Now, standing in my office on the eve of the biggest revelation of my life, I thought about the journey. The nights spent sleeping on friends' couches while coding. The meals skipped to pay for server space. The endless meetings with investors who couldn't see past my age and gender. Sarah knocked softly before entering. The presentation is ready for tomorrow. All employees have been notified of the mandatory meeting. I turned from the window. How many people do we have now? Just over 3,000 in this building alone, she replied. Your family is scheduled to be in the front row. I nodded, picking up a framed photo from my desk, the only personal item in my minimalist office. It showed a much younger me at my college graduation, before everything fell apart. I was smiling, unaware that within months my family would disown me. Miss Parker. Sarah's voice was gentle. Are you having second thoughts? I set the photo down. No, they need to know who they've been working for, who they threw away. The company meeting tomorrow wasn't just about revealing my identity. We were announcing Nova's latest innovation, an AI system that would revolutionize legal research. The irony was perfect. The daughter they dismissed as useless had created something that would transform their precious legal profession. My phone buzzed, an email from my father, sent to his department head. Looking forward to finally meeting the CEO tomorrow. I have some suggestions about restructuring the legal department. I smiled. He still thought he knew best, still believed his connections and traditional approach were the key to success. Tomorrow would change everything. Sarah handed me a folder. Your speech for tomorrow. Though I suspect you won't need it. 10 years, I mused, taking the folder. 10 years of building this company, of watching them work here without knowing. Tomorrow they'll finally understand what they threw away. But as I looked out over the city again, I realized this wasn't about revenge. It was about showing them, showing everyone, that success doesn't always look the way they expect. Sometimes it comes from the person they least expect, the one they underestimated, the one they call useless. Sarah, I called as she reached the door. Make sure the security team is ready. Tomorrow might get emotional. She nodded, understanding. We both knew that when my family realized who really owned Nova Technologies, who really signed their paychecks, who really controlled their futures, the reaction would be explosive. But I was ready. I hadn't built an empire by being afraid of confrontation. Tomorrow, the daughter they'd thrown away would show them exactly what useless looked like. The company auditorium was packed. 3,000 employees filled every seat, the air buzzing with anticipation. For 10 years, Nova Technologies' CEO had remained a mystery. Today, that would change. I watched through the two-way glass of the preparation room as my family took their places in the front row. My father straightened his tie, probably rehearsing whatever speech he planned to give the CEO about legal department improvements. My mother smoothed her skirt, no doubt planning to mention her many social connections. Diane checked her makeup, likely hoping to finally meet the person who could advance her stalled career. 2 minutes, Sarah murmured, handing me a bottle of water. I took a sip, studying my reflection. Gone was the uncertain 22-year-old they'd thrown out. In her place stood a CEO in a perfectly tailored suit, someone who controlled not just a company, but an empire. The CEO took the stage, beginning his introduction. I waited in the wings, listening to him list Nova's achievements, the AI innovations, the market dominance, the revolutionary new legal research system we were announcing today. And now, he said, the moment you've all been waiting for. Please welcome Nova Technologies' founder and CEO. I stepped into the spotlight. The auditorium fell silent. Then I heard it, my mother's sharp gasp, my father's strangled sound of disbelief, Diane's coffee cup hitting the floor. Good morning, I said into the microphone, my voice steady. I'm Emma Parker, though some of you knew me by a different name once. Welcome to my company. The audience erupted in murmurs. Employees who'd worked with me for years were connecting the dots, realizing their mysterious CEO had been among them all along, quietly building something extraordinary. 10 years ago, I continued, I was told I was useless, that my interest in technology was a waste of time, that real success only came through traditional paths and social connections. My father's face had turned ashen. My mother gripped her armrests so tightly her knuckles were white. Those people who dismissed me, they've been working in this building for the past 3 years. In fact, they're sitting right here in the front row. All eyes turned to my family. Recognition dawned on faces throughout the auditorium, the legal counsel, the office manager, the contract specialist who'd spent years trying to network their way to the top. But this isn't about revenge, I said, my voice softening. This is about innovation, about seeing potential where others see nothing, about believing in yourself when no one else does. I clicked a button, and the screens behind me lit up with demonstrations of our new AI legal research system. Today, we're announcing technology that will transform the legal profession. Ironically, it was developed by someone who was told she was wasting her time with computers. The presentation that followed was flawless. The system was revolutionary, capable of analyzing millions of legal documents in seconds, predicting case outcomes with unprecedented accuracy, transforming how law firms operated. My father's face shifted from shock to understanding as he realized that his useless daughter had just made his entire approach to law practice obsolete. When the presentation ended, the applause was thunderous. Employees stood, cheering not just for the innovation, but for the revelation that their CEO had been one of them all along. Security quietly escorted my family to my office. I finished taking questions from excited employees, then made my way upstairs. They were waiting when I walked in, my father pacing, my mother perched on the edge of a chair, Diane staring out the window at the city below. How? My father finally managed. How did you build a multi-billion-dollar company? I finished for him. With the skills you dismissed, the technology you mocked, the determination you tried to break. Emma, my mother started, her voice quavering. We only wanted what was best for me. I sat down behind my desk, my real desk, not the modest workspace they'd seen me using. No, you wanted what looked best to your friends. There's a difference. Diane turned from the window. All this time, you were our boss. Ironic, isn't it? I picked up the graduation photo from my desk. The daughter you threw away ended up signing your paychecks. My father straightened, trying to regain some authority. Now see here, young lady. No, I cut him off. You don't get to play the father card now. You lost that right the night you gave me an hour to pack my life into a duffel bag. I stood up, smoothing my jacket. You're all excellent employees. Your performance reviews are consistently strong. You'll be keeping your jobs, though I suspect the dynamic at family dinners might be a bit different now. You let us stay, my mother whispered. After everything. Like I said, this isn't about revenge. It's about proving that success comes in many forms. Sometimes it comes from the person you least expect. They left my office looking shell-shocked, decades of superiority stripped away by the realization that the daughter they dismissed as useless now controlled their careers. The next few months brought changes they never expected. My father's suggestions for restructuring the legal department gathered dust. Our AI system made them obsolete. My mother's social connections meant nothing in a company where performance mattered more than pedigree. Diane had to accept that her sister, not her law degree, was her best path to advancement. But something else changed too. Slowly, they began to see me, really see me. Not as the disappointing daughter who wouldn't follow their path, but as someone who had built something remarkable on her own terms. Family dinners resumed, though now they were held in my penthouse. The conversations were different, less about status and appearances, more about ideas and innovation. They learned to listen, to see value in different perspectives, to understand that success doesn't always wear a lawyer's suit. I kept my old workspace in the building, sometimes still working alongside employees who now knew I was their CEO. It reminded me of why I built Nova, not to prove my family wrong, but to prove that anyone can succeed if they believe in themselves. The photo on my desk now has company, a new one, taken at last year's company picnic. My family is in it, smiling genuinely this time. We're not perfect, but we're learning. They're learning. And me? I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Running the company that proved useless was just another word for unlimited potential. The bell above my bookstore door chimed softly as I flipped the sign to closed. Another quiet Sunday at Jasmine's Books, my small corner of literary heaven nestled between a coffee shop and a vintage clothing store. The evening sun cast long shadows across shelves of carefully curated books, each one personally selected, each spine holding not just stories, but possibilities. My phone buzzed, a reminder about tonight's family dinner. I sighed, already dreading the familiar pattern of subtle insults and condescending remarks that awaited me at my parents' upscale penthouse. I changed into a simple blue dress, leaving my Jasmine's Books name-tag on the counter. No point in dressing up when nothing I wore would ever be good enough for them anyway. The elevator ride to the 47th floor felt endless. My sister Victoria's voice carried through the hallway before I even reached their door. The merger is worth $80 million. Can you believe it? I slipped inside quietly, but not quietly enough to avoid my brother Andrew's notice. Well, look who finally showed up. How's the little bookshop, Jasmine? Still managing to keep the lights on. The store's doing fine, I replied, hanging my coat by the door. At 32, I was the youngest of 3 siblings and, according to my family, the only failure. My mother emerged from the kitchen, perfect makeup and designer dress making me feel even more underdressed. Jasmine, darling, you look tired. Running that little shop must be so exhausting. If she only knew that I'd spent my morning on a conference call with investment bankers, orchestrating a deal worth more than her entire penthouse. But I just smiled and took my usual seat at the massive dining table. Victoria couldn't wait to dominate the conversation. So the merger with Global Tech is almost finalized. Once it goes through, I'll be named Senior Vice President of Operations. That's wonderful, sweetheart, my father beamed. He turned to me, his smile fading slightly. Jasmine, have you given any thought to selling the bookstore? Andrew knows some real estate developers who might be interested in that location. I took a sip of wine to hide my expression. Those developers worked for one of my investment companies, though of course my family didn't know that. I'm happy with the store, I said simply. Books are my passion. Andrew snorted. Passion doesn't pay the bills, little sister. While you're playing shopkeeper, Victoria and I are making real moves in the business world. If they only knew about the empire I'd built while playing shopkeeper. My small bookstore was just the tip of a very large, very profitable iceberg. It had started 7 years ago, shortly after I opened Jasmine's books. A regular customer, an elderly man named Mr. Chen, would spend hours in the philosophy section, occasionally sharing his wisdom about life and investments. What my family didn't know was that Mr. Chen was one of the most successful private investors in the country. One day, he looked up from his book and said, "You understand people, Jasmine. You know what they want to read, what moves them. Have you ever thought about applying that understanding to investments?" That conversation changed everything. Mr. Chen became my mentor, teaching me to see patterns in markets that others missed. I started small, investing my modest savings in carefully chosen startups and undervalued companies. My first major success came when I spotted a small tech company that had developed an innovative payment processing system. I invested everything I had, then watched as the company's value multiplied tenfold in 18 months. I reinvested those profits, building a diverse portfolio that soon became Jade Capital Partners, named after my favorite shade of green. Though officially listed under a series of shell companies, no one knew that the quiet bookstore owner was the founder and CEO of a billion-dollar investment firm. While my siblings bragged about their corporate titles and million-dollar deals, I was quietly acquiring controlling interests in companies across multiple industries. My network of investments now included technology firms, real estate developments, and yes, even some publishing houses. Earth to Jasmine. Victoria's sharp voice pulled me from my thoughts. Were you even listening? I was telling everyone about my new beach house. Sorry, just thinking about tomorrow's inventory. I mumbled, playing my part. We're getting a new shipment of classics. My mother sighed dramatically. Darling, you're not getting any younger. Don't you want more from life than just books? I thought about the 3 homes I owned, including a private island off the coast of Greece. I'm content, Mom. Content? Andrew scoffed. That's just another word for settling. While you're contentedly selling paperbacks, I'm closing a deal that will revolutionize the real estate market. I hid a smile, knowing that the revolutionary deal he was so proud of was actually being financed through one of my subsidiary companies. He had no idea he'd been negotiating with his little sister's firm for the past 3 months. The rest of dinner passed in its usual pattern. Victoria and Andrew competing to showcase their success. My parents beaming with pride at their accomplished children, and everyone taking turns expressing concern about my modest lifestyle. I just worry about your future, my mother said as I prepared to leave. You can't run a tiny bookstore forever. If she could see my investment portfolio, she might worry less. But I just hugged her goodbye and headed home, not to my apparent small apartment above the bookstore, but to my real home, a penthouse that made my parents' place look modest. As I walked into my private office, screens came to life showing market data from Asian exchanges. My actual workday was just beginning. While my family thought I spent my evenings reading novels, I was managing a global investment empire. Tomorrow would change everything. Victoria's precious merger, Andrew's revolutionary real estate deal. They were both about to collapse. Not because I planned it that way, but because my siblings had built their success on appearances rather than solid business principles. When the market opened tomorrow, they would discover that their companies were worth far less than they claimed, and when they desperately needed help, they would learn that the only person who could save them was the sister they dismissed as a simple bookstore owner. I poured myself a glass of scotch, the same rare brand my father loved to brag about, though mine was a much better vintage, and settled in for a night of work. The screens before me told a story more compelling than any novel. The story of an empire built in silence, of power wielded with purpose rather than pride. The bell above my bookstore would chime again tomorrow morning, welcoming another day of apparent simplicity. But tonight, I was orchestrating moves that would reshape my family's understanding of success. They thought I was wasting my time with books. They were about to learn that the greatest stories aren't always the ones you can read on a page. The morning everything changed, I was arranging a new window display at Jasmine's Books. My phone buzzed constantly, market alerts, frantic messages from Victoria and Andrew, missed calls from my parents. I let them all go unanswered, calmly placing each book in perfect position. The financial world was in chaos. Global tech stock had plummeted 60% overnight after whistleblowers revealed massive accounting irregularities. Victoria's merger was dead in the water. Meanwhile, Andrew's real estate empire was crumbling as his overleveraged positions came due. The bell above my door chimed. I turned to find Victoria standing there, her designer suit wrinkled, her perfect makeup streaked with tears. "Jasmine," she gasped, "everything's falling apart. I need somewhere to hide. The reporters are everywhere." I gestured to my reading nook, where comfortable armchairs offered sanctuary among shelves of classic literature. Victoria collapsed into one, her composure completely shattered. "The merger's dead," she whispered. "My career is over. I don't know what to do." The bell chimed again. This time it was Andrew, looking equally disheveled. "You won't believe what's happening," he started, then stopped short at the sight of Victoria. "You too?" I calmly walked to the door, flipped the sign to close, and locked up. "I think we need to talk." "Talk?" Andrew laughed bitterly. "What could you possibly say? While you've been playing with your little bookstore, the real business world is collapsing." I walked to my office in the back, returning with 3 folders. "Actually, I have quite a lot to say. But first, I need you both to read these." They opened the folders. Inside were documents showing Jade Capital Partners' ownership stakes in their companies, along with detailed reports of their mismanagement and financial manipulation. "What is this?" Victoria's voice shook. "How did you get these documents?" "Because I own them," I said simply. "I own the documents, significant portions of your companies, and about 30% of the building we're sitting in." Andrew's face turned red. "That's impossible. Jade Capital is worth billions. They're the ones who've been financing my real estate projects." "Yes," I nodded. "I know. I'm the one who approved those loans." Silence fell, broken only by the gentle whir of the ceiling fan and distant traffic outside. My siblings stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. "You," Victoria whispered. "You're behind Jade Capital." I took a seat behind my desk, an antique piece worth more than most cars. "Did you ever wonder why I chose this location for my bookstore? This building is owned by one of my holding companies. That coffee shop next door, also mine. I own most of this block." But you're just a bookstore owner," Andrew sputtered. "No," I corrected him. "I'm a bookstore owner who also happens to run one of the largest private investment firms in the country. The bookstore isn't a fallback or a hobby. It's the heart of everything I do. It reminds me why I started investing in the first place." I pressed a button under my desk. The back wall of my office slid aside, revealing a state-of-the-art trading floor. Screens displayed real-time market data, news feeds, and investment analytics. "While you were bragging about your millions," I continued, "I was quietly building billions. Every time you mocked my little bookstore, I was probably financing your competitors or buying controlling interests in your partners." Victoria stood up, swaying slightly. "Why?" Why keep this secret? Why let us treat you like, like a failure? I finished for her, because success isn't about proving people wrong. It's about doing what you love and doing it well. I love books. They taught me to see patterns, understand human nature, and recognize value where others see nothing. My phone buzzed again. This time I answered, putting it on speaker. Yes, Mr. Chen. My old mentor's voice filled the room. The board is ready, Jasmine. Shall we proceed with the acquisitions? Yes, I replied, watching my siblings' faces. Execute as planned. After I hung up, Andrew found his voice. What acquisitions? Jade Capital is buying controlling interest in both your companies, I explained. At a very generous premium, considering their current market value is essentially zero. You'll both retain your titles, but the actual management will be handled by my team. You're taking over our companies? Victoria's voice rose hysterically. I'm saving them, I corrected her. Though you might want to check your messages. I believe the board has already voted to accept Jade Capital's offer. Just then, our parents burst through the front door of the bookstore, looking panicked. Victoria, Andrew, we just heard. They stopped short at the sight of my revealed office. My mother's hand flew to her throat. My father's face went pale. Hello, Mom, Dad, I said calmly. We were just discussing some business matters. Would you like to join us? The next hour was surreal. I explained everything. How I'd built Jade Capital from scratch. How I'd watched my siblings' companies implode through reckless management. How I positioned myself to save them while teaching them a valuable lesson. All those times we criticized you, my mother whispered. You were worth more than all of us combined. Money isn't everything, I reminded her, gesturing to my beloved bookstore. This place, these books, they're what make me happy. The success of Jade Capital just proves that you can build something extraordinary without sacrificing your passion. My father cleared his throat. But why keep running the bookstore? You don't need to. I don't need to do anything, I cut him off. I choose to run this store because it matters to me. Every person who walks out of here with a book that might change their life. That matters more than any merger or acquisition. In the weeks that followed, everything changed. Victoria and Andrew learned humility as they worked under Jade Capital's management. My parents stopped pushing their version of success on me. The bookstore remained my sanctuary, though now they understood it was just one chapter in a much larger story. Mr. Chen visited more often, still browsing the philosophy section, still sharing his wisdom. One day, he smiled at me over his book and said, You've taught them the greatest lesson of all. That true success isn't about what you show the world, but about staying true to yourself. I looked around my bookstore at the shelves of stories that had inspired me, at the reading nook where children discovered new worlds, at the antique desk where I built an empire. You know what the best part is? I told him, I still get to read the best stories first. Today, Jade Capital continues to grow, but I still open the bookstore every morning. My siblings have learned to measure success differently, and my parents finally understand that the quietest person in the room might just be the most successful. And me? I'm exactly where I want to be, surrounded by books, building empires both literary and financial, proving that you should never judge a book or a person by its cover.